Hi, everybody. Today we have Craig Schweikart on the podcast. And Craig, why don't you tell everybody about your career and what you've been doing?
Sure. Um, my career really started immediately after university when I went to work for the highest paying place because I could spell COBOL, and that was Boeing Computer Services.
What year was
And I,
that?
in 1979,
79.
and,
Okay.
and they were hiring anybody that could spell COBOL at that time.
Oh, because of the year Y2K thing.
Well, more than anything, what it was is they had moved all of their systems to these huge tape library IBM 370 in series kind of machines, and
Yeah,
they needed people to maintain them. And I lasted about 18 months.
not bad.
Um, well, it was, hey, what's your number again?
Yeah.
And that just didn't work for me. And so one of the guys that I worked with at Boeing Computer Services named Mark Pearson, his girlfriend worked at a place called Tom Software.
What was her
And
name?
Tom, yeah, yeah. Ann Pearson?
Ann Pearson. I think I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you were at Tom, you left Tom just before I joined because that was 1981.
Right.
And one of the things, basically, what Tom Software was a mini computer software company to address multiple vertical markets that was modifiable, something unheard of at that time in the computer industry. And one of their products was a home builder product. And I got attached to the home builder product because my dad used to own a lumber yard and I could speak the language. And that's truly how I got affiliated with the home builder package. And I was with Tom for I think 11 or 12 years.
Wow.
Not only was I dealing with the home builder vertical market, but I also got involved with some of their advanced 4GL, fourth generation language computer programs as a quasi salesman and a regional manager. But as happened to the mini computers, Tom Software went the same direction and tried to hang on. And one of their resellers, they sold these vertical market packages through resellers, uh, was Chris Maxwell
I
at
know him
Maxwell and
well.
Company in Georgia. And I was hired and went to work for Chris, being the director of sales and marketing for the home builder product. And we were really addressing a certain portion of the home builder market segment, which was the small to medium size production oriented builder.
Right.
Uh, Also in 1982, I was fortunate enough to take one of my first business trips to Littleton, Colorado, to meet with a gentleman by the name of Chuck Shin, who
Mm.
was instrumental in the latter stages of my career. But he really introduced me to the concept of process management as it relates to home building. Production builders do the same thing over and over again. What they need to do is they need to control their cost, tighten their process in order to improve their profitability. Chuck later became known as the profit doctor because he worked with so many builders to teach them process management and to also use computer software and general ledgers to manage their business through ratio analysis, which was a novel concept. When I first
Now,
met,
you
he
know
was
that a lot
probably,
of that I came from Lee Evans, right? Did you work with Lee at all?
yes. Oh yeah, I knew Lee. I don't know that he would know who I was other than I was the tall guy that worked with Tom. Uh, but Lee was instrumental in changing a whole lot of builders from an education perspective, teaching that process management. I think his mantra was one to one to one. He always said that you need one estimate tied to one purchase order, tied to one job cost code, and
Right.
you'll know where you went wrong. And it was interesting how few builders could really grasp that concept. Um, and so after, with another 7 years with Chris Maxwell, um, I finally was hired by Constellation. Uh, during this time, an additional software, which was Newstar, which was property management software, started to morph into more of a home building system. And one of the things that they did very, very well was sold. They had arguably three of the best salespeople in the market, and were able to leverage those sales into a more robust, more full product. And after my short stint that I had with them, I went to work for Chuck and Emma Shin. I spent 7 years consulting to the home building industry on process control, process management, and the like until I guess it was the 2009 downturn that took out
Mm,
50%
yeah.
of the builders. And that's when my career took a completely different track in order to put food on the table because there was no way to get food in the home building industry anymore. But
Yeah.
that's kind of it in a nutshell. A variety of software packages and all of that. It was a good time.
So where did you go in the 2009 period?
In 2010, I went to work for a healthcare company, a kidney care company called DaVita, DAVITA, and they're a dialysis company. And I managed. They took my management skills, and I managed a group of co-managed. There was another manager, 75 people, whose job was to process all of the payments that came into DaVita. And I left there after 5 years and ended my career with someone that I met in the Tom Software days, a large company called Guidewire Software.
Hmm.
And Guidewire writes software for the gigantic property and casualty insurers in the world. But that
Mm.
was Ed Clark. You might remember Ed
I do
back in
remember that
those days.
name. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Ed worked there, and I managed the people that implemented these monster systems. And I had 26 of these road warriors, I call them, that would fly out on Monday and come home late Thursday night and do it again the next week.
They got to come home
And
Thursday night, not Friday night?
no, no, they
What a
got to
big deal.
Friday. Yeah, Friday was their day to do all the paperwork and everything that they needed to do. But what was interesting about these guys is these were geeks among geeks, and they had never had a manager that took a real interest in who they were and what they did. They knew that they had a billing rate that most people find absolutely extraordinary, um, but they finally had somebody that was interested in who they were and people. And there were six of us in that role, and I retired from there um, 4 years ago.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
So can you think of some of the builders that you worked with and maybe some specific things you did with them?
sure. I think for it, I'm going to start with the software side of things and people implementing systems. I think probably one of the people that I became most familiar with is Taylor Morley Holmes out of St. Louis,
Hmm, yes.
and they were an early adopter of Tom systems, and they were also Lee Evans' followers.
Right.
And so I got a lot of my education from them as we talked about their system and how it worked and what it did. Uh, Savage Homes is
Yeah.
another one of the builders that I found to be forward thinking. As a matter of fact, you'll like this, Chuck. Um, in their office, everybody wore a tie,
Wow.
and I can tell you, I can count on one hand the number of builders where everybody wore a tie,
Yeah,
all the
that's
guys
rare.
anyway.
Yeah.
Um, and the whole reason for it was that Michael Sivage was underestimated once because he was underdressed,
Mm.
and he was never going to let that happen to his company. Um,
Where were they
and
located? Do you remember?
Albuquerque,
New Mexico, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Now, and they were using the Tom system. I remember that name so clearly, but I can't remember a whole lot of details about it. Do you know who
Well,
installed the Tom software there?
oh, I don't remember. Yeah, again, from the Tom system perspective, I was arm's length because the VARs did most of the
Right,
implementations.
right.
And oh, I do know who it was. It was Marty Moore.
Okay.
Martin Moore out of Denver was the VAR at the time, Carla Martin and Marty Moore. And they kind of had a regional presence in the West. And I'm pretty sure that they were the implementers of that system. But as far as remembering builders, it's going to be tough, as I say, since all of the implementations and customizations were done by VARs, value added resellers. It didn't give me uh, much experience face to face working with them. And it was also a trying time as the Wang computer systems, which everything ran on. Uh, Another remarkable statistic, thanks to the incredible utility that you wrote, Speed, we were able to do something nobody else could do. And we could run all of the software in 16 and a half K, not meg, not gig, K partitions.
Yeah.
Um, and the series of subroutine calls made it almost a self-documenting system because if you knew what it did, you're just passing parameters to it.
Right.
And so hats off to you on that one, bud.
Well,
That's
I want to make a correction there because most of the credit for speed actually goes to David Kotleb,
okay.
who was my boss at Tom, and he was the real visionary behind it, and I was one of the programmers helping to create it along with Jim Odlin. Uh, and yeah, so it was a phenomenal system because for the viewers, what it was a way of automating the programming process and making it sort of what's now called WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get. So you could lay out like a data entry screen with an editor and then link it to database fields, and then you'd automatically get add and edit and delete as automatic functions from the speed utility. And so you could create new systems and new things really quickly with very little programming experience.
Well, and that, Chuck, is what really facilitated the value-added reseller network. It wasn't hard to learn. If you understood base accounting and you could figure out subroutine calls, which pass parameters, which as a novice programmer, honestly took me less than a week to wrap my arms around it. Now, when I say wrap my arms around it, I had to drop the manual because I needed that to understand the parameters. But it really did help the builders and it helped the value added resellers. I think it was also interesting in the real early days. I did a lot of the trade show, and so I got to know and rub elbows with a lot of the competitors. I
Yeah.
mean, there was Fast that you were associated with, BuildNet, who really had a stranglehold on that small production builder market that none of us could penetrate into. And I remember their principal, John Bielfeldt, when he was so excited and showing me that the PC version of the software now had an automatic integration to Lotus 123.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, that's a game changer for a builder. Now they can get in if they could understand spreadsheets. And for a lot of builders, it didn't look like a nail, so that was a little bit difficult.
Yeah. Did you ever get to meet Keith Brown?
Yeah, yeah. Uh, Keith was an interesting guy. It was one of the things that I think was prevalent in the early software days, which was personalities. He was a personality. Uh, you were a personality with Fast. I think the VARs and Chris Maxwell clearly was a personality.
Yeah.
But these are guys that were geeks to begin with and found a way to talk the builders' language and get them interested. Not only that, but it was ripe for software sales because these guys really didn't know what they were doing from a process perspective and a management perspective.
Well, and you're making a great point there because it wasn't just the software, it was the process that the software sort of required you to buy into.
Right. Good point. Good point.
If you
Yeah,
didn't
that
buy
buying.
in, you shouldn't use the software.
Right. Right. And then you have people that were trying to they buy into the process, but then they didn't take the next step and make the necessary adjustments. Saw that a lot when I was working with Chris Maxwell and the Tom system in the later days, where you had people that go through all the trouble and set everything up, and they've got a Ferrari ready to go 190 miles an hour, and they want to drive it at 25 miles an hour because that's all they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And I know you saw that, especially. I would think you saw a lot of that with the phase builders that you were dealing with early on in phase accounting and some of that, which in my world we couldn't do. Well, we could, but it wasn't as straightforward and as clean as you could with your product. And then you had high-end systems that went to the publicly traded uh, builders because they needed the various things for compliance reasons and everything else. Like JD Edwards
Yeah, yeah,
had
Edwards.
had their small chunk carved out, but you couldn't penetrate them. The cost for those guys, national builders that had divisions in 14 states, um, they're not going to reinvest in a software package. They're going to go with what brung them.
Yes, and it's still out there. It's still, with the top, what, 20 builders or so,
Yeah,
still using it. Um, and it's pretty amazing package. I did some interfaces with it over the years
yeah,
and worked with it and saw how people were using it, behind the scenes. Very, very big builders. It was, we always tried to break into that bigger builder crowd.
yeah.
And, they're so hard, so difficult.
When one of my more memorable stories was a builder in Honolulu. I can't remember their name.
Jim Craft?
Pardon me?
Not Jim Craft. Oh, God, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, they double booked two software demos on the same day. Todd and I were there on the same day. And
Tree.
I said,
Tree.
Gentry, that's right. And I
Homes.
said, I'm more than happy to come back tomorrow. I haven't been to Hawaii before. I'll take a day off.
We're stuck in Hawaii. What are we going to
Right.
do?
Yeah. What in the world? Maybe there's something to do here. But that was pretty humorous.
Tom Gentry was an avid boat fanatic with these really high-speed boats. And he was driving his high-speed boat from Honolulu to the West Coast, and he died.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting the the number of you know we all know tragedy stories associated with various builders because it really is a small group of people.
Right.
If you go down the list of the top 500 builders, um, you're getting down to the level of 8 or 10 homes a year kind of thing, and that's 500. So one of the things I think that was really important and really aided the home builder software was because it was such a small market and there were only two dominant print resources available to them. You had Professional Builder and you had Builder Magazine.
Right.
And between those two, I would say 90% of all home builders read both of those magazines.
Right.
Professional builder skewing to the larger, more production oriented builder, and Builder Magazine having kind of that one one size fits all interest. And they also had a whole lot of advertising generated by suppliers.
Right.
And so it was a marketplace where getting your message out wasn't too tough. And if you went to the National Association of Home Builders show, which shoot, the first time I went, I think had 100,000 people attending it. It was second biggest only to Comdex at the time. Uh, it made it pretty easy to market that stuff.
Yeah, I remember um, Keith Brown and Bill Soft used to buy a full page ad in Builder Magazine
Yep,
every month. And
yep,
I'm flipping through the magazine and see those guys and like, wow, that's nice. They're taking out a full page ad.
yeah. Well, and you could do so much with trade shows. Everybody went to the trade shows. The
Right.
education that the National Association of Home Builders offered was reason enough to go. Forget
Just
about
that by
walking the
itself.
show
Yeah.
floor.
Forget the actual show, just the
Yeah,
education.
yeah. And that's where the Lee Evans Chuck Shin connection really kicked in. And Chuck is still actively involved. He's 80 now. Um,
I didn't know
and
how old he was. Jesus. And
and
I just called his office the other day, and I guess he's over in Europe or somewhere on a big vacation.
nice. Well, it's something he didn't do very often, I'll tell you that. Um, but it was interesting how um, the software and the education dovetailed so well together. I can't think of another vertical market where it works like that. It's like, no, we're going to teach you, and we're also going to teach the programmers, which is, I mean, that's how I learned most of the home building stuff was,
Oh, me too. Yeah.
yeah, Chuck Shin was a paid resource, and his bride Emma knew more about managing a business than most builders ever will, and she did it all with a general ledger and a spreadsheet.
And I'm
Uh,
sure you read her book.
yeah, as a matter of fact, I got a mention in a couple of the books because I helped accumulate some of the information, and I also went on the speaking circuit with those guys. Um, Talking about process management. And it still dumbfounds me that that concept is still foreign to so many people.
Yeah, I know. And when we first started selling the Tom system, and we had the master purchase orders and the standard plan technology and
Yeah,
all that, it was kind of weird as a programmer. I was doing demos,
sure.
and they would look at the accounting, which I always showed first, and they were like, "Yeah, yeah, this is great, this is great." And then I started showing them the PO system, and their eyes would just glaze over. And well, I don't know about that, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the notion that if you're in a repetitive process, it's only your sales price is only as good as your estimate when you started to build.
yeah, exactly.
And 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 if it was off, you know what's the old phrase? What do you call the last house that you build just before a downturn?
Yeah, you're
Home, home, where the builders aren't going to be able to sell it, and it just becomes one that they live in.
yeah,
And listening to the horror stories, um, but that's a builder mentality. I personally learned a long time ago that I was most productive when I worked for somebody else. And these guys risk it all every time they break
everything.
ground.
Yeah.
And
All personal
I admire
guarantees.
that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the things, the personal guarantees we tried to convince people is not a good idea. And it's like, I get a better rate. It doesn't matter. So, but from a software perspective, it was interesting to watch newcomers come in the earlier days. where you'd have mark systems that all of a sudden popped up. And the other thing that
You know, the
was
mark
in,
system is still out there to this
yeah,
day.
yeah, Don Scattergood.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the best demo guy, right?
yeah. Well, and again, a personality.
Yeah,
I think that's what when Todd Ullum was the lead sales guy at Fast, and I was selling the Tom system. It was a pretty consistent comment that they liked Todd, they liked me. It was they were buying from somebody they liked,
yeah,
and I thought that was kind of a nice place to be. And then you watch Newstar come in with their system and some really good salespeople that people would buy from them because they were sold. It was different, and the relationship then was handed over from the salespeople to a machine, if you will, that did the implementation and support. And they've done exceptionally well with it.
yeah. They're
Um,
fanatical about best practices within their own business
yeah,
at every single department. It's
yeah,
really just amazing.
yeah. And I think I talked about builders and Emma and Chuck Shin teaching about ratio management. That's exactly what Constellation does with each one of their divisions and each one of their products and everything else. It's like, nope, you got targets, you got to drive those targets, you got to
Right.
meet those targets. It's the way that it works.
Yeah, it's a
So,
phenomenal operation, and they go for 30% EBITDA, and
yeah,
they get it.
and and they treat their people well.
Yeah, yeah. It's I had hired this guy in 2000, Jeremy Halbert, and he's still there. Once
Yeah,
they bought my company, he came with them, and he loves it there.
yeah,
It's pretty cool.
yeah. One of the other things, Chuck, in the early days was there was a lot of trust. Builders really didn't understand computers. They didn't understand. It was a leap of faith. That's, I guess, what I'm driving at.
Right,
Uh,
right.
to be committed, and as such, unless you, as long as both parties put something into it, there was a lot of loyalty in software. What software you ran? Part of it's expensive to change, and I get that, but a lot of it was no. These people made me who I am. And I think that was uh, embodied in Carl Ryden Homes in Atlanta, uh, a true gentleman builder. But he spoke, and he was a player within the National Association of Home Builders, and he talked about that importance of partnering with your software vendor, which is a different thought. Uh, with subscription stuff, I guess it's more partnering now than it was way back then.
Yeah, it
But
always
no, you
has to
had,
be partnering. It always, and you need to partner with all your subs as well. And we talk about, dimming
yeah,
and his rules of how you run your business and stuff, and quantifying everything and partnering with your suppliers and building them up.
yep.
To,
Well,
to,
and it's also really weird to be talking about software products for a market that in our careers we've seen two major downturns. I mean, where a third of the builders go out of business.
right.
Um, and that cyclical nature of building um, was always on the builder's minds. It's like, okay, if I invest in this software product, is that going to help me survive a downturn? Uh, and I saw builders in in around the 2007 2008 timeframe when they were blowing and going like crazy. Money was cheap, uh, and they couldn't buy land, and so they were all scrambling to buy land. And that's, I think, when Landev, your product, uh, really caught the eye of some progressive looking builders. But I know and was good friends with multiple builders that lost it all because they had it all tied up in land, and land went to a value of close to zero, and they bought it at the top of the market.
Yeah, it was a really rough time, all caused by this crazy mortgage thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you know that, that sometimes there's a need for regulation. Let's just leave it at
Yeah, right.
that. As much as all of us hate the thought, there
Well, I
are
think
reasons
the
for it.
funny thought about it was I was working for these home builders who were pretty much the most regulated business in the country because
Yeah,
you're regulated at the city level, the county level, the state level, and the federal level.
right.
Literally all everywhere you could think of. And as a software company, we had no regulations, none.
That's true.
We just had to keep our
That's true.
customers happy.
Yeah.
That was our
Well,
regulation.
yeah. Well, and the interesting thing is you still had to grow. I don't think any of the software companies in the early day had maintenance fees that fed the beast, kept the doors open, um, and you kind of gave lip service to the notion of maintenance fees, and then we had a minimal downturn, and it's like, oh wait, if we can't sell new systems, we got to have another way to feed ourselves. And unfortunately, if a downturn is significant enough, there isn't even enough then
Which is
to
what it
to
was in
feed the beast.
2008. That was really the worst thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, everything. I mean, everybody was trying to figure out what's next,
Right.
and I managed to limp through that thanks to Constellation and Builder 360. Um, and
That's funny because I
we,
limped through it thanks to Constellation.
right, yeah, and well, I limped through it. You kind of rode a nice car through it.
A little analogy there.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, it was strange. Uh, but one of the other things that was kind of fun during the process was getting to know the editors of the two publications,
Hmm.
both Builder and Professional Builder. Um, and when I was doing the consulting with the Shin Group, um, what was interesting is I'd have bi-monthly calls with the editors.
Really?
What's going on? What are you seeing?
Wow.
And that kind of stuff. Yeah, they even Google my name and Builder magazine. And when I went to when I left the consulting world, they gave me a nice little 4 paragraph send off. They called me the dean of home building software.
Nice.
That's only because I couldn't hold a job and I worked for a bunch of different software companies.
Man, I had no interaction with Builder Magazine or just none.
Yeah, for me when I was doing sales, it was important because they would tell me the people that they were seeing and they're up and coming and doing segments on, and I often got a window into a prospect that I wouldn't have had, and oftentimes with quite a bit of financial information behind it. So it looks like, before the internet, it's who you knew and what they shared that provided value going back out. And they knew a lot and were willing to share a lot.
Nice. Very nice. Well, Craig, it's really been fun talking to you today.
It's good to see you too, man.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
it has. Um, I guess you'll come to some Tom reunion party and maybe we can meet up there.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. Howard put the one on last year, and it was like a high school reunion, much
Right.
smaller. But these are well, I mean, when I went to work for Tom Software, I was 26 years old,
Yeah.
and these are people, and I was there for 10 years.
Now, wait a minute. That's about the same time I was about 26. How old are you now?
I'm 70.
And I'm 71. Wow.
Yeah. Well, and I think you left Tom in like fall of 80,
Yeah, something
something
like
like
that.
that.
I kind of remember it as being somewhere in there, 80, 81, 82, something like that.
Yeah. Well, I joined Tom in January of 81 and you just left.
Just left.
And
Yeah.
and so when I say I followed you, I
Kind
followed you.
of literally.
But but I guess that kind of points up something that I said earlier. It's a small little community.
Right.
You know, I saw a couple of the podcasts that you did, and it's like I know both those people very, very well. You know, from a long time ago, but I knew them well then.
Yeah,
And
I really liked it with Ellie, how she said she started working on computers in 1960.
yeah,
And that just really blew me away.
yeah, it was so good to see her. She's always been a very positive, energetic Spitfire.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Nice.
cool.
All right, Craig, it's been a lot of fun.
It has been fun, Chuck. Good luck to you. Let me
All
know
right.
if you need anything.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. We'll see you
All
later.
right, be well.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.